Why would powerful, educated men travel across entire deserts just to bow down before a poor child? And why would a sitting king in Jerusalem tremble at just the mention of his name? That question is really at the heart of the Magi's entire journey. And honestly, it's a question that still confronts us today. To really get it, we have to go back. I want you to just imagine a cold wind sweeping across an endless desert. And up above, there's a single light, and it's burning brighter than all the rest. There's no thunder, no big, flashy announcement to the world. It's just a quiet signal. But for those who knew what to look for, well, it was basically a summons from heaven itself. And these men, the Magi, let's be clear, they weren't some kind of mystical wizards. They were scholars from the East. These were men trained to read the skies, to study ancient texts, and to recognize the signs of shifting power. And the greatest sign they would ever see, it didn't point to a throne. It pointed to a child. Now, to understand the star, we first have to understand the darkness it appeared in. You see, Jesus was born into a world that was absolutely ruled by fear. And this context it's crucial. Okay, so Rome's grip on everything was absolute. And in Judea, you had King Herod, a man of just immense ambition and paranoia. And he ruled with brutal fear. I mean, he built these grand temples, but he also murdered his own family just to protect his throne. In this world, power was all about survival, and survival meant crushing anyone who looked like a rival. This sets up such a profound contrast. Herod's kingdom, built on fear, protected by violence, and completely centered on a palace. But the kingdom announced by this star, it arrived quietly. It was found not in a palace, but in a humble home. Two totally different definitions of power were about to collide. So what were the Magi actually following? Come on, it wasn't just some random light in the sky. These were scholars who knew about an ancient promise, a prophecy that a ruler would rise up from Israel, a king whose authority came directly from God, not from the sword. And that star, that was the sign that this promise was now, finally, being fulfilled. So let's jump to the moment these two worlds meet. Because when the Magi finally arrive in Jerusalem, they don't try to get a secret audience. Oh no, they go public. They ask this question openly, right in the capital city. I mean, just think about the audacity of that for a second. This wasn't just a simple question about directions. This was a political earthquake. They were basically announcing the arrival of a rival king right in Herod's own backyard. And the effect is immediate. Herod hears it, all of his advisors hear it, and the Bible actually says that all of Jerusalem was troubled right along with them. Fear just spreads through the city like a virus. And just look at Herod's reaction. It isn't curiosity. It's not a desire to worship. It is pure 100% fear. And why? Well, because false kings are always afraid of the true king. Herod pretends he wants to worship, but in his heart, he's already plotting murder. So while Herod is trembling in his palace, the Magi, they just keep going. They continue their journey following that star away from the seat of worldly power. And the star doesn't lead them to some fortress, but to a simple house in Bethlehem. There are no guards, no banners, no royal court. What they find is just a young family, Mary, Joseph, and the child Jesus. And right there, in this humble place, these men of status, of wealth, of education, they do something absolutely astonishing. They don't analyze him or interview the family. They fall to the ground and they worship. It is an act of complete and total surrender. And their gifts are basically prophecies in themselves. First, they give gold. That's a tribute for a king, right? It acknowledges his royalty. Then there's frankincense. That was an incense used by priests in the temple, a gift for someone who is worthy of worship. And then there's myrrh. It was a burial spice, a heartbreaking gift that pointed to the suffering this king would one day have to endure for his people. Before he ever spoke a single word, the nations bowed and declared exactly who he was. So what does this ancient story mean for us? For you and me, right here, right now? Well, the story reveals a kind of spiritual divide that is just as real today as it was back then. Think about this for a second. The religious leaders back in Jerusalem, they knew the prophecies inside and out. They could tell Herod exactly where the Messiah would be born. But they didn't move. They didn't go see for themselves. The Magi, on the other hand, had way less information, but they moved their entire lives to find him. It just goes to show,
The real divide isn't between religious and non-religious people. It's between hearts that actively seek God and hearts that are just content to know about him.
So when you boil it all down, the story presents us with the very same choice. We can either seek Jesus like the Magi did and bow to the true king, or we can fear his claim on our lives like Herod and just keep trying to protect our own little kingdoms of control.
And here is the beautiful hope in all of this. The very same Jesus, who was quietly worshipped by foreign seekers in a humble little house, he will one day return as the visible, glorious King of all nations. The first time he came, the world barely even noticed. The next time, no one is going to miss it.
You know, this story whispers a really profound promise to every single generation. The true king isn't like Herod. He actually welcomes seekers. He's not threatened by our honest questions, and he's not put off by our broken beginnings. He draws people to himself who are just willing to move toward whatever light they've been given.
Scripture is really clear that one day every single knee will bow to Christ. So the real question for us isn't if he is king, but how we're going to respond to him now. Will we seek him out like the Magi, or will we resist him like Herod? They traveled a huge physical distance, right? But you know, sometimes the distance we have to travel is one of pride, or maybe doubt, or even fear. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. What distance might God be inviting you to cross to meet him right now?
That star that led them to a child, it still points us to a king whose kingdom is built on truth, and one that will never, ever end. Stay grounded in him.